All right, good morning, everyone. Hi, this is Tom Andriola, System-wide Chief Information Officer up at Office of the President. Hope everyone is doing well today, and thank you for joining us. Hope everyone had a great summer, and the school year is kicking back in at many of your campuses, so I'm sure you're extremely busy. So thank you for joining us for a few minutes today. We enjoyed seeing many of you at UC Tech at Santa Barbara earlier this summer. I'm going to do a quick summary around UC Tech at the end of the day today, but let's get ourselves started. I'm going to walk through the agenda and welcome our guests for today. First, we have Dr. Harold Schmitz, who is up at the Graduate School of Management for UCD, and I'll introduce him in a second. Our new ITLC chair, Danna Gianforte from Riverside, is with us today to give us a chair's address, and we want to welcome her to the seat. I'll do a quick update on or I should say a recap of the conference at Santa Barbara, and then we'll leave about 10 minutes at the end for your questions. Okay, so let's start with Dr. Harold Schmitz from UC Davis. I'm going to let him introduce himself, but just very quickly in terms of how Dr. Schmitz and I came to interact. He has retired just recently from Mars Inc., the candy and food company, and he actually got connected to me from some of the work that we're doing here at University of California in terms of the aggregation of our health information and some of the interesting things we're doing to improve patient care, to utilize it as a research asset and also use it as a collaboration tool. And he actually reached out to peer off of us in terms of how we thought about data as an asset, as a strategy for the organizations, and it created a first conversation. That conversation has actually expanded to talk about the continuum of agriculture, food, and health, and how all of that world is being, let's say, turned on its head through digitalization, and how really the core of aggregating and analyzing data is going to transform the way that we think about that continuum. And so we've invited him here today to talk a little bit about not only his past work, but even more exciting, some of his future work that's coming and the relationship that he has with the university as a whole, working with several of our campuses, but also the role that technology is playing in that. So without further ado, I'll turn it over to Harold Schmitz.
Thank you, Tom. Definitely appreciate that kind invitation. It's a real pleasure to be here. Given the time constraints, I'll sort of cut to the points in a very direct way, but it is a real pleasure to be able to talk to you guys. I first started interacting with the University of California system in 1994 in a big way. Sorry, I'm looking around the room. I need to be looking right at the screen. I'm giving an address to everybody. But anyway, I started working with the UC system in 1994, and it was through the Davis campus specifically, and had an opportunity, and that's another story for another day, but had an opportunity to form what would be viewed as one of the leading industrial academic collaborations between a company from the big food sector, which obviously is a topic for today, and a land-grant university, and obviously one of the leading ones, if not the leading one in the world in terms of thinking about the future of food and agriculture. And so that started in 1994, and have had an incredible partnership run that I've been able to participate in since then, built around this axis of food, health, sustainability, and cross-sector collaboration. And where that's gotten to, and we'll start flipping through the slides now, but where that's gotten to is that has gotten to a place where the future of food, health, and sustainability actually will depend more than ever on this cross-sector collaboration between the academic and the industrial sector. And so then the last piece of intro for me in that context, before we dig into the central topic, is that I've had experience from the university side. I received a undergraduate master's and PhD in food science with a particular focus on food chemistry and the chemical interactions in food, along with especially interactions in health. Then I went to Mars Incorporated, eventually was the chief science officer there. I had the opportunity to found a DARPA-esque organization for those who are familiar with that is what is currently housed at the Davis campus that interacts with the whole UC system and globally, called the Mars Advanced Research Institute. And then, so that was a 25-year run, and then recently I took early retirement from Mars, still work with them, but am focused now on building a venture capital fund in particular, because I really believe strongly there's a specific sort of cross-sector and also financial stacking, if you will. You know, think of data asset stacking. Similarly for financial stacking, there's sort of a strategy required to enable the future of food and health. So anyway, so that's what I'm focused on, and at the core of it now is cross-sector interaction between the university sector, the government sector, the large corporate sector, and now the financial investment sector. And so we often talk about, when I say we, I mean the March Fund and myself, I often talk about something called Food 3.0, and as the slide states here, it really, in almost a Pollyannish or idealistic way, it's about how do we create a more nutritious and sustainable food system. And there's a lot of triumphs to talk about in terms of, you know, where we are right now after the last 150 years, but there's a lot more to do. Food as an innovation cycle, and I'll say this over and over again during the next few minutes of this discussion, food as an innovation cycle is a peculiar thing, and it really, you know, like whether it's high tech or biotech or you know, banking or whatever, there's every sector, when it's really large, has a particular innovation cycle dynamic, and food has that. And so the team events and the ecosystem in terms of what that innovation cycle makes up is unique to each large sector, and food as a multi-trillion-dollar global sector has its own ecosystem. And there's got, you know, the fundamental, you know, point here is we've come a long way, but there's got to be an even better way, and we need to get there because of the footprint that food has globally on health and sustainability. So the current state of food, at least from my perspective, so this is, you know, the catchy view from the red planet. I mean, you know, I will, even though I've left Mars, you know, I have to say that the Mars company and the Mars family shaped, you know, who I am and how I think about things in lots of ways, and the opportunities they gave as a privately held company, as opposed to a publicly traded company in the sector, and the ability to look long-term and think DARPA-esque, as I mentioned earlier, really shaped my worldview. So, you know, this view is all mine. I take full responsibility for its errors as well as whatever is right. But I did learn a lot from the so-called red planet corporate side. So the current state of food, just to look at the strengths part of the slide, growing high-value market. So it's a multi-trillion-dollar sector. People are living longer. This is a global phenomenology. There's still, you know, lots of concerns that we'll get into about malnutrition and issues across the board there. But in terms of a growing high-value market, the food sector definitely fits, and it's, you know, we don't need to delve into the macroeconomics of the world, but you can see that. Unprecedented population growth, that's one of the drivers of the general macroeconomics, as well as a lot of the details within it that open up new opportunities to transform innovation and make it healthier and more sustainable. Rising life expectancies, that is bringing about an entirely new viewpoint on food that is contributing to this Food 3.0 piece that we'll mention in a moment. But, you know, think, which I'm sure all of you do, you know, everyone probably in this discussion and online here can think about whether it's family members or friends or somebody who has a chronic disease, be it Alzheimer's or cognitive decline or diabetes or so on and so forth, and then it's a really easy leap to think about wow, people are living longer, they're confronting new health challenges thanks to improvements in the healthcare system and public health and safety over the last 150 years. What is the new role that food needs to play in optimizing health in these, new rising life expectancy situations? And then, of course, disruptive value creation opportunities. That's huge. So, a punchline to take away from what I'm saying is, as a multi-trillion-dollar sector, food is very, very much a legacy sector. And that's not just the companies, but it's also the land-grant university system. It's also the government institutions around the world that support it. It's a textbook, what would be termed legacy sector for the geeks out there in that sort of space. And so therefore, what it means is that it's a textbook mature legacy sector. It's therefore ripe for disruption and new growth opportunities that will be difficult and challenging, but also will jump things to a new S-curve, if you will, in terms of benefits to society when these disruptions are achieved. And so limitations to think about in the macro picture. Environmental sustainability is a big challenge. The food sector arguably has the largest footprint on things like climate change, loss of biodiversity, so on and so forth. And so that's a big, disruption opportunity. Malnutrition and obesity are severe. Malnutrition remains severe. Obesity and its associated complications are now of that scale. And there's actually a new trendy word which captures this well. It's called malnubesity. So it's really important in the global food sector to think about not just undernutrition, but also overnutrition, because the health consequences in certain cases are the same. And so this phenomenon at scale of malnubesity is a big deal. And then there's a lot of untapped potential in terms of opportunities and ways of thinking. And this gets to really at the heart of where Tom and I first started interacting in Mars and the University of California, Davis, and also throughout the system, and that has been the emergence of being able to understand data assets in a new way from a healthcare perspective that relates to health, that relates to the food industry. And there's just incredible untapped potential, and those are just a couple of examples: healthy aging and human performance. But we can talk a little bit more about that in the remaining minutes. And then just to restate, because I really do want you guys to appreciate, when you're in the UC system, you have this wonderful gift of literally being at the frontiers, interacting with or driving the frontiers of science and technology, not just for the nation, but literally the world. And sometimes you can not see these sorts of the rest of the world because you're so far at the front. You look backwards, and there's these fossilized structures that are still supporting the whole thing, and the food industry is one of those. And don't look back at that and get disheartened, but look back at it and say, wow, if we bring together our cross-sector thinking and the new edges of science and technology, what can we do to actually change this legacy sector for the better? And there's a ton of opportunity, and the sector wants to change too. They just need help from places like the UC. So in this food 1.0, 2.0, 3.0 construct, just a way to think about it in shorthand is and where specifically the people on this video conference fit in. So food 1.0, in my opinion, was really when we made safety of food scalable. So the advent of canning, the ability to transport things and figuring out how to prevent botulism, why that happened, Louis Pasteur, et cetera. So that was food 1.0, safety at scale. Then food 2.0 came along with the world wars, and with that, that opened up the question of not only how do we make food safe, but actually how do we utilize food as a competitive advantage. And the discovery of vitamins and minerals, things like that started to come into play. Supply chain strategies, industrial agriculture, GMOs, et cetera. Really biotech enters food and the beginnings of high tech. So that's where we are now, is sort of on the tail end of Food 2.0. What we have in front of us is this thing called Food 3.0, and at the very heart of it, and we don't have enough time to really dig into the detail, but trust me when I say, as a 25-year industry veteran and deep exposure to everything from universities to Department of Defense and so on around the world and how they think about things, at the heart of Food 3.0 is how the industry will figure out how to leverage data assets. And so thus, on this slide, we have that phrase, digital economy. And honestly, the food sector, although it's aware of this opportunity, and although there's a lot of experimentation going on, you guys being in the business you understand the hype cycle. And at this point in time, the interaction of food, the food sector with health opportunities and sustainable production opportunities, and that being enabled by the digital economy and the data, computational science, so on and so forth, is in its infancy, and it's on the rising side of the hype cycle. And so there's a lot of lessons that still need to be learned, and there's a lot to do there. But the take-home message that I would like to leave you with, and we'll still talk for a few more minutes, but again, take-home message is the University of California, and yes, I'm putting on my UC Davis hat here, but I'm also putting on my passion for changing the food sector. I cannot reinforce enough what the opportunity is for an institution like the UC with the kind of data assets it has, and also the sort of science and technology base that it has, to be able to interact with and help drive change via data and digital in its broadest senses with the food sector is fantastic. And so, I hope that you guys are already talking about it, and I hope you'll talk about it a lot more. We're just in the final few minutes, I'll say, so what does this look like in granular terms to me? That is why I left a great job with a great company based at a great university. Thankfully, I still get to sit on the Davis campus in my new role, but I left Mars because of what I just said, which is there's an opportunity to bring together new assets and create new companies and bundle new IP to actually, form the next generation of food companies, these so-called 3.0 companies, not in a way that eliminates the existing players, as sometimes happen with legacy sectors, but actually as ways that partner with, collaborate with the likes of Mars you see on this slide, for example, and others that actually partner with companies in these areas across the top of the slide. And so we have a team of a hand-picked team of advisors to do this, who have incredible industry experience, as well as academic experience. As an example, Bob Powell, who's a UC faculty member at Davis, was the chair of the UC Academic Senate for many years and is currently chair of the Science and Technology Advisory Boards for Los Alamos and Lawrence Livermore. He's part of this team that we've assembled, and it's for the reasons that I don't need to reiterate that I just spoke about in terms of the position of the UC and the partnership opportunity there. And then there's also this aspect of having a well-defined investment strategy. And very candidly, the legacy large companies, although they do want to change to address these great opportunities in front of the food sector, they are not able to actually implement, even though intellectually they can understand it. And I helped build some of these strategies with them and for them. it's because of the large organization structure nature, they're not able to implement investment strategies that can really bring in these new sort of approaches. So there's a partnership that has to evolve with something like the March Fund or other investment funds that are thoughtfully organized to figure out how to bring these different pieces together. So that's that's sort of what we're doing, and I just want to again really emphasize as we bring this to a close that there's a lot of different pieces that need to come together and be thought about. There's and you can validate these and how you would think about it, and why a UC campus might spend time thinking about this by looking at things like the actual numbers in the healthy, the investment in new food companies, and track the venture capital, track the M&A activity. It's all going in this direction. You can look at all the consumer trends. This is healthy eating is not a trend for the bubbles in the Bay Area and New York and London and Shanghai anymore. It's a mass trend. It's got to be figured out at an economic and affordable level, but that's part of the business opportunity. But it's a mass market force. It's not a niche market force anymore. And so a land grant institution like the UC needs to recognize this, and they do. I know that. But this is like get on this bus now. It's a great opportunity, and of course the opportunity for impact. The sustainable development goals for the United Nations and so forth. All of this stuff is tracking. And so I'll end there, and just in the last 60 seconds. And if there's questions, I'd be happy to answer them. It's a broad landscape we just covered. It has to be that way because, like I said several times, food is a multi-trillion-dollar sector. It's global, yet it's incredibly local. There's not that many things that are more local than when a person picks up a piece of food on your fork or with your hands and puts it in your mouth. That's a very local interaction going on. And so food is a unique innovation sector in that it's global, it's industrialized, but it's this incredibly human interaction. And as a chief marketing officer for a large retail company told me about 9 months ago, because think about the data interface between the retail sector and the food sector, kind of similar to the data interface you guys have with your healthcare system at the 5 campuses. And the patients and whatnot. There's a lot of analogies and crossover opportunities there. But one of these chief marketing officers told me, Harold, there's nothing more personal than health. How do we actually figure out new ways to make food healthier? And I think we're in that place now. It's going to take cross-sector collaboration. It's going to take really, not just the average people, but the smartest people working together to do it. But I think I was excited to do this talk this morning, and I appreciate the invitation from Tom, because I do think that the UC system as a partner at the front edge has everything to offer in this regard. So I'm looking forward to working more with you guys in this context, and I'd be happy in a more relaxed setting where we can talk longer and dig into very specific points, to talk more about anyone who might be interested in this area. So I'll stop there.
Great. So, Harold, thank you. We do have a few minutes for questions, so we've got the team ready here to receive your questions either through Zoom or Slack, if you've got any quick questions for Dr. Schmitz.
Harold, this is Danna. For those on the call, I'm in the room. I have a question for you because I'm fascinated by the topic, but I'm married to someone that has food sensitivities, digestive problems, and so we have to always look for organics and non-GMO products, but those are also the ones that are the most costly on the shelves, right? Are you aware of any work going into driving that cost down to broaden the availability of those types of healthier foods to more economic brackets?
So that's a really, really interesting question at a bunch of different levels, but in terms of the economics about it. So, there's kind of two strategies that people approach with this from an industrial level to addressing the consumer need that you just said. So one strategy is let's front-end load as much advanced technology as possible, and let's actually think about this like almost a biotech or high-tech sort of way, and in a cynical sort of moment, I would say, in a Silicon Valley-esque sort of way. So in other words, how do you premiumize? Because your family member is interested in that, you guys are interested in it, you'll pay more. So how do we premiumize the offering as much as possible? And then you can probably tell, I think that's fundamentally where we don't need to be. I think that's what holds back a lot of advances. Where we really need to be and where the heart of food is actually understanding these consumer interests and needs and figuring out how to make it as economical as possible. And this is actually where, for example, the data asset piece comes into play. So part of why it costs a lot of money is that we actually don't implement large data assets that could improve the efficiencies of the supply chains that you're looking for example, so that whatever it is you are buying or your family is buying, they can buy it at a cheaper level because that organic farmer, whoever was building that product that you're interested in was able to do it as cost effectively and high quality as possible. And right now, we're not as modernized as an industry as we could be, but that's an opportunity.
Right.
Okay. Carol, I got one more question for you, which is, there are people here on the call from across our community, the people in the health system, if they work with the electronic medical record, you're not talking about this. There is nothing about what our patients are eating that are captured within the, the confines of the traditional health system, but there's a lot more digital, information being gathered by patients themselves. But we also have people out here who are part of our, what we call a research IT community, meaning these are people who are actually positioned and work closely with faculty to support their technology needs around research. Given that you're a scientist by training and you work with some of the most, forward-thinking researchers in biology and chemistry, what do you see happening around their world of research that would be helpful for our community the next time they're out talking to, how do we support the research that you're doing that will advance spaces like you're working in?
So I've been, a great question, obviously. I think, so part of it is to move past, so whenever, we engage in this sort of thing, the first response is, wow, there's so many opportunities. Then it's like, wow, but we're not collecting that particular data. But then it's like, well, but we are doing this, and we could assemble these sort of assets. And I think what sort of the next level that needs to happen is that with strategic forethought, it's like, hey, what are the most important questions in terms of the interaction between food and health, food and agriculture, food and sustainable food production? What really are the most important questions? And with the data generating assets we have and the tools that we have in place to generate that data, how do we actually, with again, strategic foresight and intentionality, collect the right data sets with the right quality and start working with those and building solutions from those? And so I guess sort of the simple summary I would say is people go out into the world and have the sort of conversation that you're saying. It's like, how do we put the food and health interface, in the case of health, at the start of the conversation rather than backing into it? It's like, let's actually build a strategy where we knock this out of the park and figure out how to do it right, rather than how do we sort of retrofit some things that we have to get to a sloppy but best answer we can. It's like we need to move past that.
Yeah, great. One more question just came in?
Yeah, we have a question. I'm curious if you've seen applications of blockchain for tracking food supply chains. Do you see this as a promising technology?
Definitely. Great question. So So I had the opportunity to help start the IBM Almaden Lab, obviously in this area of partnership with Mars, literally 13 years ago now, and that evolved into a food safety partnership. And blockchain technologies is something that IBM recognized and we got quite familiar with, is in terms of the opportunities with blockchain technology for transparency and safety, applications in this super complex supply chain associated with food and agriculture. So it's not simple, but without a doubt, I do think it's a done deal that somewhere in the next 10 years, in some application format, blockchain will actually change for the better the safety of the food supply chain. So yeah, definitely great question, and I'd encourage you to look further into it if you have interest.
Dr. Schmitz, thank you for being here today. We look forward to the continued collaboration with your new fund.
Awesome. Thank you, Tom. Really appreciate it. And everybody, thanks for the opportunity.
Okay. All right. So next I'd like to introduce Danna Gianforte. Some of you know her. Many of you maybe have not had an opportunity to meet her or hear her speak. But she's been with Riverside a couple of years now, and she bravely took on the role of ITLC chair starting in July from Matt Hall. And, she's certainly learning about the university from a different perspective and kind of taking on this role, which obviously we know is part-time and volunteerism, et cetera. We always like to have our chairs have an opportunity to speak to our community and help our community understand how they see the ITLC's role and what some of the initiatives they'll be focusing on. So Danna, I'd like to bring you up and give you the opportunity to talk to our group.
Thanks, Tom. Just want to thank Tom for the invite and all the support staff here for everything you've been doing. I've got to shift brains after listening to two of my favorite things, technology and food, to what I'm supposed to say now. But it was a great intro conversation. I really like that. So thank you, everybody, for the invite, and thanks to everyone who has joined. As Tom said, I don't know if ITLC chair is as much of a volunteer opportunity as it is a voluntold opportunity, but we all know how those go. But it's been an exciting few months since taking over from Matt Hall, who stepped in and actually did a double tour of duty in the role, and so I really appreciate the opportunity. But since the opportunity is now mine, I wanted to do a few things. One, there's a section of my monthly all hands that I do called CIO celebrations, and so I wanted to take a moment and do one of those for all of you out there. I'll give you an update on what we're doing at UCR, because I am very much bought into the theory that being a part of the UC, if we would take a moment to share what we're doing at our campuses, we have an opportunity to partner and collaborate and share resources a little bit more broadly. So I definitely wanted to share what we're doing so that you're aware. You may not be aware. We could partner as much as there's opportunity, and then give you a little bit of an update on what we did at our last ITLC meeting and where we're going to go from here. So the CIO Appreciation, I want to take a moment and really drive home and echo the appreciation for the countless staff hours that are going into making UC Path possible. Leave it to the UC to be just crazy enough to take on such an endeavor, but there has been, and I don't think we will ever actually get the data right on how many hours have gone into this project across all of the campuses, the health centers. And so I wanted to recognize those that are already in production, the brave souls that are there, those that are coming. And as Tom mentioned, I joined in December of 2016, it's almost 3 years now, time flies. And After we went live, we were preparing for a local staff appreciation celebration. And I don't know how you all refer to the project on your campus, but this is how we refer. When I asked folks how long they've been on the project, they could never tell me in number of years. But what they would say is, well, little Susie's now going into 3rd grade, and I was pregnant with her when I was reassigned onto the project. So however long that is, or Bobby is graduating high school and he was in 6th grade when I started. So however long that is, when you start to define your length of time assigned to a project on major milestones with your children, such as pregnancy and high school graduation, that is a seriously long time to be working on a project. And it will definitely go down in history as a success sometime around April of next year when we are all live. But it has, I really want to appreciate and give, just a word of thanks to all of the folks who have spent countless hours, nights and weekends away from family to make this go live at all of their campuses. And for those of you still on the blue side, all of those of us on the brown side, certainly have you in our prayers and thoughts. But we definitely want to just say that for those of us that have already gone live, we are still willing and there to help those that have not gone live yet. It's a great team effort, and I want to thank everyone who has been involved. So a little bit on what we're doing at Riverside. After four power outages in 6 weeks at our data center in the spring, we have decided that we're going to relocate to the Cyxtera data center in Irvine, where a lot of the health system data centers are. Riverside County Power is largely non-redundant, and when you have the type of climate that we have in the Inland Empire, it takes a toll on UPS systems. When you are not constantly checking those can often fail. We have real power and utility issues on campus just broadly, and so we are going to, we're largely into the migration process to move our data center out to Cyxtera. We have racks now, we have our scenic connection, we have our network equipment in, and so between this fall and winter of next year, we will be moving just under 300 applications over. And that includes dev stage and production. Where we can, where there's opportunity, we're certainly moving to SaaS products. Where we can, we're certainly moving to cloud. We're definitely going to utilize cloud for our DR strategy, but for those things that we will move and continue to maintain an on-prem location for, we are moving those off campus. And if picking up 300 systems and moving them over the course of the next year isn't enough, we're really focusing on, because let's be honest, the campus, while it's very important to them, it doesn't impact them as much as the front end work. So that back end work that we're doing through what we're calling Project Genesis, we did play around with calling it Project Exodus, but we chose Genesis instead to focus on new beginning and the newness instead of the get the heck out of here. And we're moving also, we're doing a lot of focus on the front end through a lot of digital transformation efforts of our student systems. Riverside is a banner campus. They went live in October of 2016, right before I arrived. I will contend probably to my dying day that Riverside is by far the smallest and most successful banner student information system school implementation and support that I've ever seen. I literally inherited a team of five staff who implemented Banner quite successfully and continue to support it today. For comparison, my Banner implementation team at the University of Georgia was 31. So I went from 31 to 5. I thought all hell was going to break loose. But they're a small but mighty team. And we're really focusing a lot with them on a lot of the business transformation efforts around workflow automation. We do a lot of things on either some manual paper-based processes, believe it or not, or some defunct online, very disconnected processes. And so bringing those things in to a really robust workflow automation solution, improving the user-centric experience. We're implementing the Elution Ethos Data Integration Hub and several SaaS solutions that will integrate through that and really improve the user experience and centralizing things so that folks don't have to log into 10 things. They may be able just to log into a central thing and really improve their user experience. Along those same lines then, if you improve your data and all of your integrations, then you need to get the data back out efficiently. So we're kicking off new efforts with a new AVC for institutional research and a new interim provost and a somewhat new vice provost and dean for undergraduate education to take on more improved reporting. We definitely have reporting on campus. You can go to one of maybe 25 locations to pick up different data sets. And what we really want to do is hone that into a very enterprise-wide collective data repository that folks can go to that will pull the data sets in from many locations. You don't have to go to 20 places. You can go to one place. We're trying to empower more DIY reporting, give the power into the end user's hands. And the time that they could take to write us an email and ask us to run a report, they could go into a defined data set and pull the data themselves. So we're both implementing Tableau, Power BI, and also looking at more forecasting and analytical solutions, and we'll be implementing Elution Analytics for a lot of those on the student side as well. So a lot of transformation going on campus, a lot of new things that are certainly things that we could continue to collaborate on and network on and see where we can all come up with the best of breed. And so to wrap it up, an update from ITLC. So in our last ITLC meeting, my great co-chair, Ann Kowalczyk from Merced, led us through a design thinking exercise. So if you've ever been through a design thinking exercise, it's a lot of fun, but if you could imagine all of the UC CIOs going through one, it makes it more fun. And coaching them through that was a lot of fun. But I think that we came up with really great ideas forward. The focus of the conversation was how do we make the most use of our standing committees, our work groups, our communities of practice, all those groups that you serve on and spend a lot of your time contributing to. How can we make sure that we're getting the most use out of everyone's time, the biggest bang for our buck, making sure the work that we're doing is impactful in one way or another. And so we came up with the major themes that we would focus on in the next few months, and largely centered around improved CIO connection, to be honest. So we'll focus on that CIO connection. We'll drive home the real purpose and outcomes that we're going to drive toward, figuring out and streamlining how all this work is done to make it most efficient yet most impactful way forward, looking at and really honing on talent and resource development opportunities that surface within the groups, that are available because of the groups, and how that then fosters the collaboration and networking that we can do across the campuses. And really with this core base, and belief in staff diversity being a strong contributing factor to the betterment of the whole. And then the notion that the broader UC culture and then also the campus cultures feed in to all of those things in the honeycomb at the top. And then really taking an opportunity on some strategic partnerships that exist and that are available, certainly on the research side, much like blockchain and food. Taking advantage of those, recognizing those, seeing where they exist within the system and how we could leverage the great set of resources that we have across all of our campuses and health systems to broaden our impact across the system and expand that beyond just our individual campus and out to the broader system, and then, of course, into the community and globally where we can. And that is it for my section. Tom?
Thank you. Okay, Danna, thank you. I can confirm that, the design exercise was very interesting. I have to say it's one of the most engaged ITLC discussions I think we've had in my time here. So I think it was a real success, and we'll be interested to see, the output from that and how we take it to the next discussion. Okay, so then I told the group that I would spend just a few minutes on recapping UC Tech. If you were there, you know this story. It was an amazing event. Our hats are off, and we should all give a virtual applause to the team at Santa Barbara who did not just a great job of planning the event, creating a great environment for us, but also showcasing what makes Santa Barbara special. That's one of the things I love about UC Tech is the opportunity to give each year their own unique flavor. But it's also a celebration of just what this event has become to us. Formerly known as UCCSC, renamed by Santa Barbara as UC Tech. So just look at how this has evolved over time. My first year going to it, because as most people know, I'm relatively new to the university, we had 225 people. We had over 700 attendees there. And you can see the distribution by location. Obviously, the home campus always has the most, but you can just see how this has grown from something that has been kind of a collective, kind of eclectic group of individuals to one now where the ed tech group is there, the research IT people is there, the accessibility group, uses the opportunity to have a face-to-face meeting and a learning session. The healthcare sector of our university is there, which a few years ago didn't exist at all. And then maybe even more impressive than just putting up there the numbers is also looking at, just the size and scale of the impact of putting this number of people together. Yes, we have a record number of vendors that are now supporting our effort because for them to get in front of 700 of our professionals is a unique opportunity for them, and they want to be there. 286 of you presented on what you're working on, sharing your experiences with your colleagues. In 2014, we only had 225 people in total go to the event. And this year we had over 280 people present their stuff, 165 sessions, 100 scholarships, something that was introduced a few years ago. So scholarship in the form of we pay for someone's ticket to attend. They still cover their travel expenses, but the opportunity to broaden the group of people who could come to catch some of those groups that we know are connected, that are part of our IT community, but maybe in their local funding situations can't have the funding to get there, we find an opportunity for them to get there. 11 CIOs in attendance. The first year I went, there was the host CIO and myself were the only two there. I will not out anybody, but I saw some CIOs having fun and smiling this year. It was absolutely amazing. And then if you look at the workforce tracks, right? Last year we had our first Women in IT track. This year it expanded to the concept of diversifying our culture. 16 different presentations, some that were kind of continuations from last year's topics, some that were brand new, some by leadership. Our CIOs did a panel. So just an amazing amount. And of course, it's always an opportunity for those who are not connected into our community more formally. Think the blog, think Slack, it's an opportunity for us to kind of really sell them on what this community is all about and get them connected in. Just as an example, because I always try to do it before I walk into this room, 7,520 Slack users in our community. That's 7,200 of our 8,000 people. We use the number 8,000 as a rounded number of our community who are in Slack and finding ways to share what they're working on, ask a question, get access to someone's knowledge to help them in their daily work. So just lots and lots of opportunities. It's gone from that 2-day event. My Monday is now completely full because I'm visiting groups, our communities of interest who are meeting up and using the opportunity to have a face-to-face. Thursday, the day after, was filled. We would have been there, except the health CIOs had organized to meet down at UCLA, so we did some Zoom calls. Joe Benkford and I did some Zoom calls to help kick off meetings. So it's become, not just the event, but around the event, an opportunity to use the networks that we have and the opportunity to collaborate. So just a fantastic event. And again, if you don't have it on your calendars, 2020, UCLA, August 17 to 19, theme, Envisioning the Future of IT. It'll be happening at the Luskin Center. I was actually able to meet with the committee a few weeks ago, tour the Luskin Center with them. It's going to be a great venue for our event. So really looking forward to it. Okay, now we turn it over to a few minutes of questions. You can address questions to any of today's presenters. And I'm going to ask Danna to come up, sit side by side with me and see what's coming in from the audience. Nothing. We wowed them today.
We did. We just shut down the house.
Yeah.
I did want to say I watched James put on his bow tie. It's the first time for me to ever see anyone do that on video earlier. And you learn something every day in the UC.
Maybe we can have him come be a presenter. It's like, lesson, quick 5 minutes.
That's how you do it.
How to do a program.
Oh, see? Yep.
There he is. Okay. Thank you, James.
Here's a question.
Question coming.
Who brought Slack to UC?
Yeah. Who brought Slack to UC? I don't know
who created the internet.
It's like who created the internet, exactly. I don't know who the first person is. Maybe we should actually use Slack to have someone self-identify as the first person and do some research. I will say this. I actually kind of poo-pooed the idea twice when it was brought to me that maybe this should be a standard tool. Yeah, believe it or not, someone brought to me and said, we should use a standard tool. And I was like, I don't get it. And the second time, it's like, let the community decide. And obviously now, 7,500 plus people using it as one community is pretty amazing. So I think it's a great example of the best things, the most adopted things in the UC are grassroots in nature, and the community will help us vet those things out. So we were actually talking before the call started about Zoom and how Zoom has such a cult following from underneath and is now something that is just kind of our de facto standard for what we use for video conferencing.
Here's a question. On the blockchain discussion earlier, is there a formal UC-wide group to discuss security privacy? I'm sure there's something high up and the Slack channels, anything else?
So the question is there UC-wide around security and privacy?
A discussion about blockchain and security and
about
privacy.
Blockchain specifically. I'm not aware of anything, are you?
I'm not aware of anything specific UC-wide regarding blockchain security.
I hear little snippets here and there. I also hear some people in our community think that they want to see the value of blockchain before they really spend more energy on it. I even heard one actually fairly luminary faculty / kind of IT professional talk about blockchain in the context of healthcare as being a distraction. Not sure or ever have a meaningful impact, but it takes our attention away from other things we could be doing right now. So I think when you see things at that level, you just don't know where it's going to go. Certainly our IT teams, we tend to like to see things that are proven if we're going to put them into production environments. So I think we're very much in the wait and see. And of course, IBM is marketing all over the place blockchain, and they are usually a good sign that if they put a lot of marketing dollars on it, eventually the industry comes. They don't benefit from it, but the rest of the industry tends to. That's kind of the trend.
It'd be interesting if any of our research IT folks that are connected know of anything that might be doing with faculty.
That's actually a great question.
So Tom, where do you think that classroom and other educational technology at UC should be going in the future?
I'm going to pass that over to a campus CIO.
Well, okay. I'll avoid the initial comment I was going to make about campus CIO and the deference of that question. Really, I think it is enabling, I mean, you know, a lot of colleges and universities have done it if that have done this if that has been their standard mode of operation. But I do think it is enabling more synchronous online programs. You know, we tend to either do pre-recorded or kind of set online education. I think integrating more interactive technologies like Alexa, Google, those types of things, anything that improves the bi-directional interaction between both the lecturer and the students. I think that's still a gap within online education today. I got my master's degree from Texas Tech University while I was overseas. It was an online program. It was very one direction type of education. You had to be definitely a self-starter and have a lot of initiative. I think where classroom technology is going to benefit both the research and the faculty as well as the learner is as much as we can move to bi-directional facilitation, and also the you know, integrating a lot of the machine learning that we can between the students and those new technologies. We also have a researcher and a faculty member here that we could ask that question of.
Any comments?
It's going to change everything.
But it just kind of, you know, to piggyback a little bit, there was, I was looking at an industry report earlier this week that was talking about what percentage of provosts have top of mind the topic of digital transformation, right? Which I think is ed tech taken to the next level where, you know, it's a lot more than just the ed tech. But it was like 80% of higher ed provosts have it as something that is on their mind, trying to understand what is their institution's strategy for it. Mm-hmm. So I think it does speak to the technology that is touching students is a top of mind topic for our campuses today. All right, maybe we have time for one more if there's anything else in it.
Are there any efforts to bringing in the new technology into UC, like VR, AR, and AI?
Yeah, I mean, certainly topics like that definitely don't come in top down. They come bottom up at us. Mm-hmm. You know, Danna can talk about from her campus, and I think if you ask your local CIO, and it includes on the med center side, because they deal with the medical schools, you'll see examples of AR, VR being utilized in different settings. Mm-hmm. And I think you know, kind of the sensing that, you know, the sensing mechanism needs to be, when does this stuff start to reach critical mass, so that we as IT teams need to support it more broadly, or try to think about how to harness the learnings and build more of a platform approach versus allowing 1,000 pilots to go. But how do you think about this in the context of your campus? I
agree that it's very much, you know, bottom up through research, through the interactions with faculty. I know Riverside, we're talking with a researcher about a data visualization wall and bringing in AR and VR into that space on campus. And so it's where we can partner with the researchers, because I think that the ultimate impact of using those technologies is, what it does to enhance society through whatever research may be going on. This particular faculty member that we're partnering with has large grants from NASA, and a lot of his will be around space. And so I want to see if we can use it to be like an astronaut or something. But I'm very excited about it. But it is it's really the grassroots research-based integrations that we can get into. I do think where we should partner more is with some of the ed tech companies that are also getting into this space. I recently visited the Ellucian headquarters in Virginia and saw their smart dorm room that they have in their research area of the business. And it talks to you, it tells you your classes, it tells you what your grades are looking like if you continue down this path. It's kind of maybe like having a parent in your dorm room, actually, but it was really interesting to see that the companies are thinking about it. And so where we can partner with them and make investments with them, I think that will also be an opportunity for us to expand in that space.
Great. All right. Well, we're out of time for today. I want to thank our guests one more time for giving us such inspiring presentations. We thank everyone for everything that you do. We look forward to talking again soon. So everyone, have a great day and have a great year. Bye-bye.